Hey, what's up, everybody? Sean here. So, finally back to the swing of things here. I recorded the last few videos, which should be released about the same time, but of course, due to some of the security concerns that were going on in the Middle East, where I'm currently deployed, there was a pause on posting anything out there on social media just for security reasons, just in case. I thought it would go on for a lot longer, but the 12-day war wrapped up pretty quickly. And right now, it doesn't seem like anything is going to flare up. Should be able to get back to the swing of things and back to normal. So this should be being uploaded pretty soon, along with the previous videos that weren't uploaded in the last couple of weeks. So this is week 13. Going to do the recap. So important notes here. I did make a couple changes here. Partially, some of the things you'll see in here are the gaps that exist simply because of the week with all the events during the 12-day war, how it impacted regular day-to-day business, the ability to go to the gym, that type of stuff. But I use that opportunity, as I mentioned in a previous video, to break my alternate day fasting and eat every day. And along with that, take advantage of the opportunity of eating food to start with a creatine loading so that when I kick things off here with week 13, I was ready to roll back with alternate day fasting, and all the creatine was preloaded into the muscles, and it's now just sustainment. Did that simply because the creatine, when you do it 4 times a day, it gets absorbed a lot easier when you have food. So doing it every day just made it a little bit easier. So as usual, we're going to go over the exercises of each day, the meals, and do a week to week comparison. One thing I will point out before I get started is that I had to scale back on some of these after taking basically a week and a half off for some of the exercises. So you'll see that as we do some of the exercises in the review, that they dropped a little bit compared to the highest point that they were a few weeks ago. Also, because some of the charts that I was doing were getting a little bit crowded, I decided to cut out some of the early weeks and basically have week one, week four, week eight. So, like the month where I was sitting at each of those months. And then the last couple of results are the last couple of weeks. So, you'll see that here in just a second. So, here's a example here. You can see week one, week four, week eight, and then week 10. Week 11 was the week when everything kicked off. Week 12 is missing from all of those. That's where those gaps are, just because that really disrupted everything. And then week 13 is this week, and I was able to get back into fairly normal operations here. So you see a lot of red here with specifically biceps and shoulder presses. Not only did I drop back to 5 for all of my failure sets, but for the biceps and the shoulder presses, I just couldn't do it with the 30 up to the 35. So I actually dropped down to the lower level of weight for each of those. The other ones I was able to actually maintain. So most of the drop here was primarily based off of dropping the number of reps in that final failure set. I've started using Google Fit to track my steps because my watch broke during all the events. So still recording the steps and the miles. But one thing that I am doing differently here, I started using MyFitnessPal a couple weeks ago to start tracking the number of calories that I'm having. Took a little bit of tuning with it to figure out exactly what my sustainment number of calories are. It has me about 220 or 2,270 calories as my amount for sustainment. So I'm recording all the food that I'm eating. And then on each of the exercises day, my goal is to eat a surplus of calories. That way, not necessarily in a deficit, I have a little bit of opportunity for some muscle growth in there. And then, of course, on the fasting days, it's going to be a significant calorie deficit, and that's where a lot of the weight loss is going to come in. So, what did I eat for food? Again, trying to focus on a lot of protein as well as part of the meals. Still a lot of fruits, cutting out a lot of the grains, just because they don't, for me at least, they don't do a lot for me. But you can see here, I had a whole bunch of different proteins in this case. They still had some dates at the dining facility, so I had to go over those. I love the flavor of the dates. Blueberries are always a good opportunity for not only the antioxidants, brain health, but in general, you can see what I have there, trying to eat a lot of vegetables, still having a little bit of dairy. So primarily each day having milk in the morning, milk in the evening, and then a Greek yogurt that doubles with the protein with the Greek yogurt there. All right, so as you can see here, day two, that big gap in the middle there is essentially where we're seeing where I couldn't run outside, or actually, this was the bike and the stepper machine. The gym was closed during those times, so I couldn't record anything, didn't have any type of exercise equivalent that I could use with the gym being closed. So, no records for those ones. And then getting back into things, I was able to essentially maintain the same amount for the floors, but the bike dropped a little bit on the number of miles, which actually was consistent with where I was before, slowly going down on the number of miles. I'm not quite sure why I'm hitting that, but it seems to be the trend in general. Day three was a neck exercising day. It was powerlifting. It was also Tuesday, which means it was a 45-minute boxing class. So here as well, I did that reset, dropping the second set down to 5, that third set down to 3. Didn't drop anything for the minimum weights that I did. So still 125 for the minimum set for squat and deadlift, 95 for the bench. But in general, you see that downward trend, and we have that gap in there for week 12 where there was no exercise because we didn't have equipment available and everything was essentially busy at that point. So here, the calorie deficit, wanted to highlight that one. By not eating, if my maintenance calories are 2,200 some calories, plus the exercise associated with doing the step machine and the bike, and then running at night, I had a deficit of almost 3,000 calories. They say a pound of fat is roughly a deficit of about 3,500 calories. So almost a pound of fat by itself on each of these fasting days, or at least specifically this one. Trying to maintain a slight surplus, making sure I'm eating more food than that, not only beyond the maintenance level, but also maintenance plus the exercise. Because again, I am running at night, each of the nights between 2 to 3 miles. So the maintenance minus the calories that are burnt from that cardio and other step activities. So going with that, and then having 380 calories on top of it. So you can see stuff here. So here you can see the cheesecake, but in general, having a lot of protein with it. So Tuesday was taco day. So we had a breakfast burrito in the morning, had a taco bowl, or actually a taco shell at lunch. The calories associated with the shells, the cheeses, all the stuff that go into the breakfast burritos and the lunch burrito, those took up a lot of the calories by themselves. Salmon was able to top it off there, and the cheesecake, that's where I was able to push up to about the plus 400 delta for calories for the day. But in general, most of the food you see there is pretty healthy, between as healthy as you can call tacos. But in general, you got ground beef, you got chicken in there, you got some guacamole, you got some vegetables mixed in, eggs, of course, with the breakfast burrito. So not much to complain about there. Cheesecake, can't really call that healthy, but in order to keep yourself going and motivated, you need to have something to strive for at the end of the day, especially when you have a couple calories left to try to get to that positive level. Week 13, day 4. This was another cardio day, a fasting day. Despite having essentially a week and a half off, I was able to improve my mile and a half time by a couple seconds. I think previously it was like 13.28 at week 10. Now it's at 13 minutes and 26 seconds. Along with that, do my standard set of push-ups, sit-ups, the 1 minute each of all these different exercises, and then all the other walking. I think maybe some of the improvement in running, or at least the reason it's not as big of a loss as I thought it would have been, is because during the shenanigans that went on with the 12-day war, we had to basically walk around with 40 pounds of gear all day. So I think they probably built a little bit of leg strength during all that time, and it translated to a slightly faster run time. So you can see the number of steps I got in there, the mileage, of course, the steps plus the running and these minor exercises here basically made a calorie deficit of about 2,700. And then, of course, since there's no food, talk about that, just electrolytes. Day 5 is another exercise day with strength training. Again, resetting everything down to the fives for the failure sets, weighted lunges. The left foot is 1, right foot is 2. So that's why you see 20 and 10. You can count it as 10 and 5 if you count left and right as one instance, but in this way, I calculated out just as each leg being one instance. But again, you can see from week 1 to week 4, the second month, the first month to the second month, big gap in the first month, a smaller gap in the second month, and then slight gains from the second month where we're at now, and then of course dropping back down again. The food you can see here, this was one of those where I needed to really load up again to hit that positive almost 300 calories. So had a enchilada loaded up, or a burrito loaded up with some cheese sauce, some refried beans. They had some bread pudding, so I had that for some dessert for some extra calories. But other than that, had salad twice a day, loaded up a bunch of tuna. And each of these days, I'm trying to hit up between 170 plus sometimes about 200 grams of protein, which for someone weighing in their 160s, it's higher than it's recommended, but higher protein is going to help limit any of the muscle loss that may come in from the fasting days with alternate day fasting. Day 6 was another cardio day, a fasting day. So use the row machine and jump rope. So again, pointing out week 12 had no exercises there because the gym was closed. Surprisingly, only dropped about 200 meters for my previous best. 5,800 was where I was at week 11, right before the gyms closed. Jump rope was able to maintain that. I think next week I'll probably go up to 5 minutes and then a 1 minute rest for some additional time for jump rope. But in general, jump rope, the row machine used a lot of calories, did a 3 mile run at night. So again, almost hit the 3,500 calories alone for a deficit. In addition, I did the 3 mile run here. So that was last night. This is actually the 4th of July. So we had a 5K. So technically it was slightly more than 3 miles. So with that, I got this nice 5K t-shirt for running that. And again, even though I had that week and a half off, essentially, I was able to still run it faster than a 10-minute pace. It was closer to about a 9:30 pace, which for someone my age isn't too bad. Not great. Not going to win any prizes with that, but still something I'm happy with. And of course, it was a fasting day, so just electrolytes. All right, so today, day 7, Saturday, I actually was able to go up with some of the exercises again after the reset from earlier this week. Bicep curl went in 1+ there. Shoulder, I was able to increase by about 3 for my failure sets. So slowly working my way back up to where I was prior to all this kicking off. I think I'm maybe do one more week here showing the gap there with week 11, week 12. And then after that, I'll probably drop them off. And then because week 12 was the end of the month, so following the 1 week for week 8, week 12 would obviously be the next one that you would have for the monthly recaps. But because there was just nothing, I may show week 13 there moving forward and then get rid of weeks 10, 11, and 12. All right, so the food that you can see, focusing on a high level of protein, a high level of vegetables, a lot of tuna in my meals, just to get that protein level high as possible, including hard-boiled eggs, fried eggs in the morning. Try to get a good balance of fruit for the vitamins that come with it. But overall, was able to stay above my calorie levels by about 460. And I'm tracking that is because as we come here to the final slide, again, giving y'all an opportunity to take a guess where you think I've ended up, whether I gained with the gap, whether I dropped down some weight, whether I sustained. Based off of that, it's probably a little bit obvious looking at the calorie deficits overall compared to the calorie surpluses. Probably a little bit of loss that you can anticipate, but it was actually higher than I was anticipating. So the reveal here. All right. So overall, from last week, again, remember that last week was week 12. I used that for the taking the pause of alternate day fasting and use that opportunity to load up on creatine. So that by itself is going to increase water retention, which added a little bit of weight. So losing 2.8 pounds from there, I'm back down to my lowest point so far. So for a total of 23.4 total pounds lost since I started. My waist, I lost about a half inch again from the previous week. So down total 6 inches since I started this about 3 months ago. And again, pointing out my base calories was based off of what MyFitnessPal was telling me was about 2,270 per day as an estimate. The overall delta that I had going from when I weighed myself last, so that would have been Saturday morning last week to Saturday morning today, all the meals in between there essentially accounted for about a calorie deficit of about 8,600. So with that, you would expect, again, assuming that a pound of fat weighs about 3,500 calories, it's about 2.5 pounds that should have been lost 2.8. Some of that could have been water. I think I'm going to try to maybe figure out what the delta is for what I lost for 2.8 pounds, add that into baseline set of calories. I think it amounts to about an extra 170 some calories per day. So probably calling it 2,400 in the future, and then see if that gives me a slightly better accurate assessment or estimation of where I'll be at the end of the week as far as planning my meals for calorie surplus, calorie deficits. And then down there in the bottom left, during the whole event, I went out and bought a scale because the gyms were closed. It was a little bit of a fancy one where it actually measures the body fat and a whole bunch of other stuff. So right now, I'm doing this one because it's showing about 18.3% body fat. So that's going to be another thing that I'm going to be tracking in these videos as well, so you can see where it goes. So with that, if you look at the images, again, top left is where I started. Obviously, a lot of progress from where I am now in the bottom right. And even when you see the circle complete, as I'm going around, as I started to turn, just doing the little bit of steps, had a bit of a flex in my gut as I was doing it. So you can actually see a little bit of abs finally showing compared to previous weeks. So overall, I'm happy with that. All right. So that's really all I have. So until next time, I'll see you in the next video.